November 2023, almost exactly 12 months ago to the day, we bought this fan as an empty panel van. Since then, we've been on a bit of a journey building, customizing this van to our needs, and that's been an exercise of trial and error. And I would say we are 98% there, but there was one thing that I knew that I would need to upgrade at some point in the future. So at the heart of a camper van build is the electrical system, and I've covered this before in a couple of previous videos. I'll link to the last one up above. And at the time that I was ordering the components and designing our electrical system, there was one component that I knew was coming to the market but wasn't quite available yet. And when it comes to your electrical system, you can buy power banks and pre-built all-in-one systems, so you don't have to change anything. It's not modular, it's just one unit, it's very compact, and you can put it into your van. The advantage with that is you're obviously going to save a lot of space. Disadvantage is, what if you want to upgrade a component or a component fails? You can't really just take a bit out and replace it. You've got to take the whole unit out and replace that, so potentially more expensive. Anyway, the component that I knew that I was going to upgrade is, of course, the Orion. Now this little guy absolutely packs a punch. This is the brand new Victron Orion XS. Now, there's loads of videos on the internet all about this. I'm just going to cover off a few main specs. This is a 50 amp DC to DC charger. So it takes power from your battery and it charges your leisure battery at a maximum current of 50 amps. And my current charger does a maximum charge at 30 amps. And so at that point you think, okay, you're gaining 20 amps. That's not so much of a big deal. But that's not the only thing that this little guy can do. As you've probably noticed, it's quite small, and there's no heat vents on the back. There's no fans. There's no extra grill to dissipate heat. And that's a key point. So in the old Orion, and I'll show you in a minute, it has vents on the back. It's a much larger unit. And the reason for that is it can get pretty hot. Not dangerously hot, but I've definitely noticed on 2-3 hour drives, particularly over the summer, that unit can get hot. So this unit actually runs at around about 98% efficiency, whereas the old Orion runs at nearer sort of 86, 87, 88% efficiency, depending on the temperature. And obviously as the temperature increases, the efficiency reduces. So not only is this smaller and lighter, it's cooler, so it runs cooler, and it's way more efficient and powerful. So what's not to love about this thing? Well, obviously bigger power requires bigger cables, particularly if you're running over certain lengths. Now I've calculated that from where my battery is, and again I'll show you in a moment, where my battery is under the passenger seat, the run to where the Orion sits is around about 4 meters, give or take. There's not much in it. Then you've got to think about the return path and where it goes into the distributor and then into the chassis. The total run is probably right on the limit of 5 meters. Now, according to the Victron manual, if your run is more than 5 meters in a total continuous loop, then you really need to be increasing your cable size to 21, or over here in the UK, I think we only have 25 mil. So we really need to be increasing our cable size. At the moment, when I installed the original Orion, I could only fit 16 mil cable as a continuous run. And that's fine, because that's rated up to 110 amps. But at 25 mil, that amp rating is much higher. So obviously, technically, a 16 mil cable can deal with the current that's going through the cable back to the Orion. However, the issue over that length is voltage drop. That means then the unit has to work harder to convert that back into usable power. So the bigger the cable, the more opportunity that the unit can work more efficiently. And therein is my challenge. Because I originally put in a 16 mil cable, I basically have to take all of that out and then replace it with a new cable. And that unit right there is going to cause me a headache, because I've either got to remove all of that in order to access the cable because it runs behind and down through a cavity, or think of something a bit more creative. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I installed the new Orion XS, replacing my original Orion, plus running a new bigger cable to make sure that we've got enough power going into the DC charger. So this won't be applicable to every build, but if you've already got an existing component and you're looking to upgrade it, this could be handy, and it might give you a little tip on the best way to approach it without ripping out all of your cables. So without further ado, let's get to it. So here we are, this is the electrical cabinet, and this is the original Orion, which I'm going to be removing. Just a quick size comparison. That's the difference, but that will look quite nice and neat right there. The other thing to note is the colour. So this is a lighter blue, that's a darker blue, and now the new Orion XS matches that new RAW colour. So the OCD guy in me means that everything is a bit more matched up and equal. Just getting in a bit closer, so this is our power in, and this is the cable that we're looking to effectively replace, but with a chip. These two, these are both 16mm, and they go into our distributor here. So the run is like less than 20 centimeters, and they could be replaced, but for now I'm actually going to leave them at 16mm, keep them there, and just focus on this cable here. Now flicking to the front of the van, as you can see, I've had to remove both the front seats, the driver's and the passenger side, which was fun because both of them have got heavy swivel bases on them now, but it's necessary to do it for this job. So I'm just going to walk you through some of my initial wiring. This plastic cover, and obviously it'll be different on different vehicles, but this is the Crafter Gen 2. So under here, there's like a junction box in here where I can take a positive feed off straight into my circuit breaker. Now this is a 60 amp circuit breaker, and I've already upgraded this cable. This is now upgraded to 25mm, but the other side of the cable, which is this one, this is 16, and that runs all the way through there, down underneath that point of the floor, and then underneath behind these seats. And if we drop below, oh, it's a bit dark. Basically it runs along through there, and then up through the cavities, over the wheel arch, behind the battery, and then into the DC charger there. And that is my issue. It's this, from that point there to that point there, I am not going to be able to access. So I need a creative solution. So my plan is to run 25mm from the battery to as close as I can possibly get to my leisure battery, and then I go into a Victron mega fuse holder and then downsize the cable, or just keep the original 16mm cable for the last, I reckon it's about 1 meter. Now calculations mean that the voltage drop over that length was still within the limit, so I should still have enough power to make sure that the Orion XS can run efficiently and smoothly and without heating up and all that kind of stuff. This is the original cable, and this is also my remote signal cable, which also runs on a similar route. Now originally when I actually installed this retrospectively as well because of the smart alternator, and I originally run it down through here so I could then tap into the fuse box, and I was never happy with that. So having ripped all this out, I now have an opportunity to run this remote feed cable at the same length or the same run as my main power cable, which will go basically up through there and then along the floor under that plastic box and then into the fuse box. So it's more logical flow, and then it basically piggybacks off that fuse. This is essentially a D+ signal cable that will only trigger the Orion to start charging the leisure battery when the ignition key is switched on. Did a similar thing with my aux beam controller, which is a separate video. This middle bank of fuses is what will allow you to do that. So the first job is to disconnect this cable, both at the circuit breaker. This is the 16mm. Disconnect that. I'm going to have to cut the cable there and see how long we've got, which will then give me the length required for my new cable. And you can see there's not much in it. This is the 25mm, this is the 16mm. There's not much in it in terms of cable thickness wise, but the difference is the core in terms of how many strands of copper wire there are going through, which means that there's less voltage drop over longer distances. Okay, so let's remove the old Orion now. Before I basically take these cables out, I'm just going to disconnect everything, shut it all off. So I'm going to switch it off on the isolator, and then we're going to turn the battery off as well. So that's everything safely disconnected. There's no power running through the system. I mean, I could attach the 25mm to the 16 and try and pull it through the conduit, but if it separates at any point, basically that way, then yeah, there's not really much opportunity other than to basically reroute the cable completely differently and come in through the electrical cabinet and then maybe up and over and down, but the OCD guy in me just means that it's just a bit untidy. I don't really like that. So I think we're fine. We're going to stick with the original plan of running it into a fuse box and then downsize the cable. So that's our remote switch. Goes into H pin on the remote. We'll be keeping that for the new install. So there we go. There is the old Orion now out of the electrical cabinet, and this is the new one. And as you can see, there is quite a difference in terms of size. Also weight. This guy is heavy. I mean, look at the difference there. They're the cooling vents. On this one, you just got a gap and then an aluminium plate at the back. So you can really see just how much smaller and lighter this unit is. You know, it's narrower, it's slightly taller, ever so slightly, but the depth is where it really matters. The other thing to note is on the terminal connection, so you feed your cables in to the clamps, then you've got this separate plastic cover that then clamps down on top of the cables, again, just to stop any cable movement happening from there. So that's a very nice modern touch from Victron there. Right, let's get this installed then. So whilst we're here, I've just taken the opportunity to tidy up these cables. They were a little bit frayed, and yeah, I just wanted them a little bit tidier so that they can go into the terminals nice and easy. So just a reminder, these are all 16mm cables that I'm putting into the Orion, and they're pretty snug. I think any bigger and they're going to be really tight, so going 25mm into these could be interesting. And I know some people cut a few strands off just to make the cable thinner, which I don't really like the idea of doing that. So we're going to stick with this plan of using 16mm cable and see how we get on. So there we go, there is the Orion installed, remote cable into H pin, input, round, output, all wired in, nice and tidy. Now we need to move on to the other end of the van to connect it all up. So this is the Victron mega fuse holder, and we're going to go battery side from the starter battery in, 80 amp fuse, and then, so this is 25mm, and then 16mm out to the Orion, and we're going to install it in our toilet cabinet right at the back. So here we are in the toilet cupboard, very exciting. So this is our new power line, 25mm into the Victron mega fuse, 80 amp fuse, and then 16mm back up in the cabinet. And as you can see, it would have been really tight to get through there. Just tidied up some of these other cables, which are for lights and diesel heater and other bits and pieces. Not the neatest in the cupboard, but you never see it because the toilet's just shoves in the way. So that's that part of the install done. Now the other part, so we've got our circuit breaker in and connected. Made sure we connected it onto the right side. And then the cable runs along here. Run it through some conduit, zip tied it all up, round to there, and it goes up and over. This is all going to be hidden by the plastic trims anyway. And then it goes down and runs along underneath our seats, and then into the cupboard. So the next job is to put all of that back, put the seats in, and test it. So I've switched the power back on, and the battery's all operating. And now we're going to go into the app. I've already connected the Orion and set it up within my network. But now we're going to configure the Orion to the appropriate settings. So the first thing what to do is go into settings. We've got charger enabled, we've got input of 50, output of 50. You can adjust this, which is quite a nice feature, but we're going to go for max. Battery settings, as we've got a lithium battery, we're going to select that. Everything else is fine. Engine shutdown detection. Now, because we're using the remote input, although it has got smart alternator and out the box this will work, but because I'm using the remote signal, I'm going to switch that off and then adjust my input lockout. So I'm going to change that down to 11 volts, and we're going to turn this up to 14 volts. So what that will do is that will prevent the battery, our lithium battery, from discharging the starter battery when the engine is off. And I said I've already connected to my V network, and that's it. That is everything set up. At the moment, charger is off because I haven't put the ignition in the key. Sorry, I haven't put the key in the ignition. Usual settings. What I've noticed compared to the older Orion is you've now got a history channel, so you can see what it was doing in addition to the graph in terms of the state that the charger is in. And there's also 4 states along here, and I think that's because we've now got float being recorded. Let's finish off putting the seats back in, and then we're ready to go. So there we go, the engine is running, and we can see that we are generating 50 amps of power at 694 watts. This is currently charging the battery, and our input voltage is 14.3 and a current of 49.7, so the voltage drop across the cable is minimal, and our power is looking good. That just shows you what the status is. Got a bit of a history in terms of its active cycles and some other stats down there. And obviously this will start showing some data, I guess, after a day or so. Yeah, very happy with that. Just remember, when you're first setting it up on your camper van or whatever vehicle, make sure that the only input you've got in is the power coming from your starter battery. So disconnect the remote and disconnect your leisure battery and any solar panels. Do the configuration in the app, then connect your battery, then plug in your remote cable. Otherwise the Orion won't activate. So just to recap, if you are looking to retrospectively install an Orion XS into your existing van or off-grid electrical system, you can absolutely do it, even if you've got restricted access to cables that you may have originally laid, that you then need to increase the cable diameter to reduce the chances of excessive voltage drop. The way that I've done it is to run 25mm cable from my starter battery into a Victron Mega Fuse, and then downsize to 16mm for the remaining half into the Orion. And if you've got a Euro 6 engine, don't forget to install the remote cable to make sure that the Orion knows when the engine is running and that charging should commence. So at the moment the engine is off, and as you can see, the charger is also disabled, even though the voltage is still at 12.4 volts. If you don't set the lockout and the restart values, then what will happen is the Orion will stay active and it will deplete your starter battery, which will then prevent you from starting the van, which you don't want. You can adjust your input and lockout settings slightly higher than what I've done. However, what I've noticed is with this particular van, the Crafter, even when driving after a few hours, sometimes the voltage that's being fed out of the alternator can drop as low as 11.3 volts, and you're still driving along. Effectively, as far as the van's concerned, everything's just switched off. That power isn't required, so therefore it's not drawing it. So that's why I set the lockout value slightly lower than that, to make sure that the charger is always charging even when the alternator voltage has dropped. Obviously it means that the Orion has to work a bit harder, but it means at least it's always on, always charging your battery. As soon as the ignition switch is out, then regardless of the input voltage, the Orion will switch itself off. So hope you like this video. Please like, please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Boom.